Good day. This is Dr. James Weldon, or Yogati, speaking to you this week from Charlotte, North Carolina. We've decided to come down to do some work in this area, and actually today there's a special event with the March for Our Lives in the future, where the children of high school in Florida that had a terrible disaster. Many children were killed, are all marching throughout the United States. There are millions of them that are marching on the March for Our Life. And we're coming down to get away from the retreat center, but also to support them this week. So I'll be doing one session. So in spite of this difficulties, this is an interesting chapter, chapter 12, episode number 18 in Living the Enlightened Life, from my book, The Secret Journey to the Enlightened Mind. And again, I encourage all of you that are listening, especially for the first time, to go back and listen to some of the earlier chapters here in The Secret Journey to the Enlightened Mind that are available for free online on my Facebook page, James Yogati, facebook.com/James Yogati, or my Facebook page, just Yogati, Y-O-G-A-D-H-I. So chapter 12 is kind of a culmination of many years in my life, and it's entitled, Then Drowning in Joy. And as usual, in the different chapters, I have poems at the beginning of them. This one is a little bit longer, because I remember at the time that I wrote this 10 years ago, I was so inspired by the experiences that I'd been through, and I'm feeling very grateful at this time in my life. You know, I passed through many, many difficult times, and there's actually a bunch more that are coming I'm not aware of. But at this point, I'm living in the mountains in Nederland, Colorado. We've got a house there overlooking the lake, and I'm seeking to deepen my experience. And in the last section, we're talking about the sense of victory that was coming through in the last chapter or two. Now the bliss, which there really is bliss in life. There really is a deep state of joy and happiness, which is much greater than normally is experienced. And this is the inspiration, I believe, that has inspired all of the great spiritual teachers throughout the years, and encourage them to help people continue to do their deep work, continue to meditate, and continue to do the service, so that at some point they may begin to peek into this tremendous state of joy and bliss. So this is the poem at the beginning of chapter 12, entitled Then Drowning in Joy. You have given me everything, yet I know not who you are, other than my own self. Wherever I see truth, I see only you, yet I know not who you are. When my mind is confused, you gave me wisdom, which followed me everywhere, like a faithful servant, showing me the truth in all, yet I know not what you are. I am so amazed, I am so amazed. In my foolishness, I see only differences, but you show me the one again and again. Yet I know not where you are. As I sit behind the veil, you pierce the veil with that desire. My desire was only your grace, always revealing the one. Yet I know not why you are. So how can I put all these fantastic experiences that we've gone through and discussed here lately into perspective? I know that many that are hearing these words will wonder whether they're true or not. But in my case, at that time in my life, I never felt stronger and more grounded in my life. You need to realize, or you need to see, that realization of God is not a static state, but an ever fresh, expanding sphere of consciousness, of awareness, of love, light, and joy. The divine is infinite, and it can be known in many ways. No, I said to myself at that time, I'm not going crazy. I never felt more clarity. I felt clarity at every step in my life. I know that the test of a spiritual path is the nature of the character that unfolds within us. A person growing in consciousness should spread more love, clarity, joy wherever they go. An insane person may have visions as well, but their visions spread something totally different. I must admit that in the past, some of my experiences that rushed into my life did make me feel unstable. It's true that sometimes I was unable to integrate what I experienced in the inner realm in my daily life, but now exactly the opposite thing had happened. A crucial change had occurred. Now I never felt more balanced and integrated in my entire life. I continued to experience a constant amazement and revelation, but somehow I'm becoming accustomed to inspiration as the normal state. Merging with the divine is like gazing into a limitless ocean. We see something vast beyond our comprehension and are wonderstruck. Soon we realize there is no end to that greatness. The kind of superconsciousness that exists there completely transcends our limited mind. Yet we can go through many years of practice and live completely with that awareness because it is truly what we are. I now felt the cosmic mind, it was all about me. And that bigger existence seemed to follow me as moments of illumination. Fortunately, the strange games of intuition that came from time to time had finally decreased. The spontaneous yoga and postures that I was doing in the morning began to slow down. In a few chapters back, I was talking about yoga, these called kriyas or spontaneous yoga that I was experiencing began to slow down. It was a phase that I'd passed down. And what really remained was love. I have fallen completely in love with the divine love I'm finding inside myself. Now I'm beginning to see more and more that the divine is everywhere, and I find myself falling in love with everyone that I meet. One day walking down a wooded path in New York towards the dining hall of the retreat center, at this time I had gone up to a retreat center in South Fallsburg, New York, associated with the Siddha Yoga organization. An elderly man and a young child stroll in front of me. And as I approach them, even before we meet, I feel a bubble of oneness connecting us. And they turn and look at me. And the moment we see each other, a deep bond of love emerges from the past. Instantly, I feel a connection with this man from, I believe, an earlier life. Here's a friend I know and will understand the crazy story, the mad story of my life. Suddenly, as we look at each other, he cries out, Ram. And without a thought, I automatically sing out Ram with him as well. And we laugh at our surprise at our common outburst and look at each other closely. Love, like a warm blanket, surrounds us. In a moment, two apparent strangers become best friends. His name is Dolet, and he was with Swami Muktananda for many years before Muktananda's passing away. And he worked as his dentist, actually, in India. As we walk, his young granddaughter, Gopi, skips to my side and takes my hand. And as our hands touch, I tremble instantly with the unity I feel with both of them. We share our common stories. I share some of my crazy stories. And he says, he tells me, since I've been a child, I've been crying Ram like this spontaneously. It's something I can't control. Ram has been leaping from his lips throughout the day for almost 60 years. I was just trying to actually imagine him working as a dentist. I guess you could do this in India. You're working at a dentist and you're working on somebody's tooth in the middle of it. You turn and you go, Ram. Pretty funny. I reply, the way he cries out is so odd. It's as if my breath has become his and I sing out Ram. By the way, that word not only is a word of obviously a very special spiritual being who lived approximately 10,000 years ago in India. There's a whole dialogue on Ram and Sita. It's also a sound which has to do with rays. So Ram, Ram, it's rays, like rays of light and energy. There's much more to these words. They have a deep meaning energetically as well. So Ram is the name of a great king or an avatar, an incarnation of God. Like Christ, you could say, who lived about 10,000 years in India. When India had a vast empire that stretched across Asia. And the Indian literature is full of ancient stories of the life of Ram. Meeting with Ram felt as if I were returning perhaps to that time. And the love we experience for each other feels ancient. Several days later, as we bounce along together in a shuttle bus between the dining room and the lecture hall, again, he cries out Ram again, and I shout it out as well. This is not something that I'm doing consciously. It's just kind of leaping out of me. Almost like a sneeze or something. It just happens. And I shout it out. I feel a strange but exhilarating sense. I can't help myself. It literally leaps from my lips. We are so close to God that his call to God is mine as well. You know, what I'm feeling is astonishing. The love is so strong that tears of joy rush to my eyes. And I'm suddenly in that moment cast into an ocean of amazement. And we look at each other and wonder and laugh for minutes like children who have just completed a great prank. The energy is just unbelievable. Again, Dolat yells out, Ram, and so I literally fall out of the chair. I'm laughing so hard at my uncontrollable response. Every day we sit at a table in the dining room during our work or seva period, and Dolat tells endless stories of Baba Muktananda's life. And Dolat begins, once Baba came to my house to spend the night. Early in the morning, a thief finds a window open and enters the house. And the thief makes his way through the meditation room where most of the valuables are kept. But instead of making off with the valuables, he actually falls asleep. The power in the house keeps anyone from being harmed. Even the thief is protected from his own mischief as he falls asleep through the morning until he's discovered and the police take him away. During these stories from time to time, we would spontaneously speak out Ram together and burst out laughing. And when we do, the whole room of our friends around us would break up in stitches. From the next room, the cooks around the corner would peek to see what was going on. And Dolat and I hold up our hands in helplessness and continue our work. Together, we're crazy in our love for God. The madness is sweet beyond measure. And a few days later, returning to Colorado, I awake before dawn with my head, a sound ringing in my head. I cannot help myself. And I must speak this sound out. A long "oh" arises from my lips. Since my experience with Dolat, anything might happen. And this is unusual. I feel just like my reaction to Dolat, yet I have no idea what this is. I only know that the exclamation of the sound feels wonderful beyond words. I see now that the latent spiritual energy or kundalini within us is really an amazing force. Once awake, the Shakti, this life force, Kundalini, may give us visions of the future. It may release blocks in our body, unfolding the capabilities of the mind. Still, that force does much more. It also can reveal the divine to us gradually in an infinitely personal way. As the force moves through my body, I sing out, "Ho," and I'm astonished. I can't even do it now the way that it happened back then. And that energy was surging through my nerves, signals of bliss everywhere. The concentration of joy collects about my face like a tiny torso. And this is something new. The energy or kundalini is now collecting on my lower chin, tickling the sides of my nose and forehead. And the energy is becoming just too intense. In reality, it's like being tortured with a joy. Then that sound jumps from my lips. It's as if my body cannot take it anymore and cries out in relief. The movement of the life force begins again. It is very much like, like being tickled, but only 1,000 times stronger. And the concentration of joy is so strong, my body is forced to express a level of delight beyond all comprehension. The next morning, there it is again. Sometimes it comes as a quiet whisper with a feeling of wonder and gratitude. Sometimes I'm shouting aloud in astonishment. Sometimes one peep is enough, and sometimes it rings on for minutes. Naturally, I'm curious about the meaning of this unique word which has jumped into my mind. Perhaps research might discover the sound. In the past, the inner wisdom often shows me answers to my questions through perhaps some visions or dreams. However, this wisdom is silent on the meaning. I know a few things. This word ho is a mantra. It's not just an ordinary word, it's a living force of life in the form of sound. That sound contains the essence of my experience at this time as surely as the vibrating atoms of my body holds me. The next morning during meditation, I hear a sound ringing from my mind. I follow it back to a source, and like seeing my reflection in the mirror, I see myself looking back as a free being. I see my potentiality. I see myself as a free, liberated being. Sometime, perhaps in the future, that I could become. And like a drop of dew in the early morning, merging with another, that mantra becomes my present form. And then from my inner being comes a Sanskrit symbol. This is another insight, kind of tumbling in space, blazing with light. It rushes forth and explodes into my mind in a moment. It's gone. And later I look up that in the Sanskrit dictionary. Of course, I have no knowledge in Sanskrit. And I see that it's the symbol, the Sanskrit word for this sound that was coming up from in me. I'm wondering how incredible this is. I have no knowledge of Sanskrit, yet I find that even the written language somehow is written within me. And throughout the day, I continue to hear subtle sounds like this ringing. A bird outside my window sings, and I hear the sound of Om beneath its song. Om. The leaves rustle in the wind, and I hear Om there. A waterfall runs nearby, and I'm hearing that sound, Om. I've been told that Om is going on all around me all the time, but normally my physical ears have been too limited to hear this, but something has changed. And actually, the next morning, I awake again to hear a deep rumbling sound. And I look outside the window and wondering, is there a truck parked outside my house? The sound is so strong, I can't tell where it's coming from. Deciding that the sound must be a truck, I mean, I was really believing it at this time, out of sight, I get up out of bed and head to the bathroom. And as I sit down on the toilet seat, I feel it vibrating with sound. And I'm brushing my teeth, and I realize my toothbrush and paste in my mouth are all vibrating with the sound. What is this vibration? Actually, in the story of the truck before, I didn't put this in the book, but I actually walked outside the house, and I walked down the street all the way around the corner because I was sure there was a truck. I was hearing this very deep rumbling sound. And I'm standing there with toothpaste dribbling down my face, and I hear this vibration. High up in the crown of my head, this mantra becomes very distinct. And that sound is like one dominant bell ringing from some far away church. And the vibration is so strong and so sublime, I stand there transfixed for about 10 minutes. And then I return to my normal awareness of my toothbrush. I'm just frozen in that experience. And about 10 minutes later, I come back. In meditation, my awareness follows that vibration drawn up to a place in the crown of my head. And the mantra rings, and that sound emerges from myself as light rises from a burning wick. With every beat of my heart, every wave of my breath, the life of my body, and vibrates with Om. A new insight came at this point. I saw how each one of these living sounds, these mantras, affects the Hopefully I'm connecting and you're not losing me here. If not, I guess I'll do this chapter again. The sound of these seed letters affects the life force, the prana, in a specific way. And that this is the knowledge behind the use of specific sounds or mantras in meditation, singing, chanting, and so forth. So I go down to the Colorado University and find my trusty Sanskrit dictionary. And students are running by, carrying stacks of books. Finding a cubbyhole, I consult my Sanskrit dictionary, and it says that this word that was coming up, ho, is a loving greeting between friends and a warning challenge at the same time. In ancient times, when friends would meet, I guess in some parts of the culture there, they would say that word ho. A sentry on guard uses ho when anyone approaches at night. So they would say halt. In some places in India, this is still done apparently. On the battlefield, it was also given as a salute to friends and enemies alike. The guards would call out ho to notify their companions that all is well. And as I read on, I also see that it's an exclamation of wonder, surprise, joys, and delight. And now I understood why, when the Kundalini raced through my body, I couldn't contain myself. It shouted out this word ho. And my spirit was crying out in amazement and jubilation, even when I didn't understand personally what was going on. So at this time, I'm being overwhelmed with bliss, which I actually thought there was so much more to come, my dear friends. And when that awareness spoke out within me when I couldn't, and that was so amazing. Okay, this is kind of like in English when we're delighted, we say, "Oh." It's the same in many languages, even animals will say that in wonder. And I think of a coyote calling out at night, in the moonlight, greeting his friends across the landscape. Oh. And it also means let it be or let there be. And as I read this, I realized a strange coincidence. I always loved the Beatles, and that song, Let It Be, that song to me always carried such great mystery. And with this experience uh, came a change. Before, my inner experience had become the dominant life I live. Sometimes during the week, um, it would come up, but then it would fade. I was like a miner who had been mining all of his life, looking here, running there, all over, trying to find, that wealth to bring happiness. And I came home all of a sudden to find a treasure in my own backyard. I had, I had discovered a new joy with this precious gem and singing it silently or openly in my life. In the past, my life, I was like we have a game in the United States, maybe you don't have this around the world, called ping pong, where we play on a table with a ball that goes back and forth, kind of like tennis. And all my life, I'd been continuously tossed about in my own mind. This is not freedom. To be tossed about with this circumstance, this misunderstanding, this problem, this is not freedom. It really, in its deepest aspect, is hell. Even if the best things in the world happen to me, on the outside, I'm still trapped in my mind. In the midst of the greatest good fortune that I imagined could ever happen to me, I had still in the past experienced myself as a limited being. Now somehow that viewpoint had changed, and there was no doubt about it. The closer I looked, I saw that I was actually no longer in control. Something significant had happened within me, and there was absolutely no turning back. In meditation, I jumped into the ocean of myself, and I paddled out into the sea of my inner existence. And now some force that I couldn't fathom had thrown me out of my boat of my limited life. And so I have a picture in the book here of my wife and I, Lynn. I'll post this online. Actually, we're in China and we're actually in a boat being carried across. So like a man on a boat in the middle of an ocean storm, a sudden wave came by and tossed me overboard, out of my small mind. And what would I do? For years, I swam back to the boat again, into that limited space. Now I can't swim back. There's nothing I can do. And I was wanted this new perspective last. Only time would tell. But now the revelations even begin to chase me into deep sleep at night. So I think we'll end that chapter here. And the next chapter, chapter 13, which I'm not going to do today because we're going to go out and do some service in the community, meet some people and encourage them to speak out and try to lower the violence that's happening. Those of you around the world, it's really sad, that so many hundreds of thousands of people have been killed by random gun violence here in the United States. And of course, I'm sure you have that in your culture as well. And we're going to go out and try to spend a little time, meet some of these young kids from the schools that are trying to make a change in our society and try to support them. So chapter 13, the next one, I'll read the poem in here as I normally like to do, and then we'll reconnect tomorrow with you. Chapter 13, the next one is, who is sleeping and who is awake? And the poem goes this way. Who's asleep? Who's awake? Does it matter when the divine is in all of us? Does it really matter? Who knows and who does not? When the same self within us is always the same. Yes, there is pain and death, It is real, and yet it does not exist. Ah, God, you are so great, showing me this impossible truth. I see the love that we are, dancing after itself, seeking itself forever. So thank you for spending these few minutes with me today, sharing my own individual adventure of the secret journey to the enlightened mind. That same enlightened life exists within us all, and we have to be patient. We have to be consistent. We do need to do the work at the time to be together individually and collectively to dip into that space and understand that we all have our own story to tell. Our life is like a book of many books on the shelf, and we may not remember our past chapters, but it will continue onwards until the crescendo and the attainments beyond move us into that space of limitless and continual joy. Go out and do something good in your own communities if you have a chance. Go out and support the changes for good that may be happening in your society. We've learned a lot about the power of nonviolence and the power of supporting each other collectively in our society. Don't go into risk, but contribute the way that you can. You have the opportunity to do so in your own life. Thank you very much, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. Namaste.